Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now in the Johnson edition to poem 771 of Emily. None can experience stint. Stint here meaning deprivation, to go without. You'll remember this from 275 and 299, without a stint. You'll also remember it that we have been playing around with the idea of going without, or deprivation. We'll see it here when we get to 779. The service without hope is tenderness, I think, because 'tis unsustained by stint. Rewarded work has impetus of gain and impetus of goal. There is no diligence like that knows not an until. Now, our work here is in many ways taking us back to one of Emily's most famous poems. I mean, often when people ask about Emily Dickinson's work, what is her most well-known poem? It probably is 67. Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. In other words, the winners are not, they don't know winning. They can't understand winning. It's losers who understand winning. Why? Because they go without stint, if you will. This is what some scholars have called yoked opposites. You'll remember this yoked opposite from 167. To learn the transport by the pain as blind men learn the sun. To die of thirst suspecting that brooks in meadows run. To stay the homesick feet upon a foreign shore. Haunted by native lands the while in blue beloved air. This is the sovereign anguish. This the signal woe. These are the patient laureates whose voices trained below ascend in ceaseless carol, inaudible indeed to us, the duller scholars of the mysterious bard. You'll remember in 689, she played this same game again. The zeros taught us phosphorus. We learned to light the fire by playing glaciers when a boy, and tender guessed by power of opposite. To balance odd, if white a red must be, paralysis our primer dumb, unto vitality. This idea that it's through opposites that we learn so much about the world. Now, question, did Emily know about the Taoist faith and the idea of the yin-yang symbol? That in any experience of life, there must be some light and some dark. There must be some hot and some cold. And that within each of those opposite domains, a little bit residual of the opposite resides. It's fascinating to read a poem like this and say, well, Emily's playing with the yin-yang symbol. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily's our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 770 poems. We just finished with 770. I lived on dread. Now, in this argument that she's making, all knowledge is somehow relative to prior knowledge. In other words, you're not really poor if you've never known wealth. The only way you really understand poverty is if you've had wealth and then you lost it. Those are the people who understand poverty. If all your life, all you ever lived with was poverty, well, you don't know poverty. Because the only way you can know poverty is what it feels like to have wealth. Interesting argument. Let's see how she says it poetically. None can experience stint who bounty have not known. The fact of famine could not be except for fact of corn. Want is a meager art acquired by reverse. The poverty that was not wealth cannot be indigence. By the way, indigence only used once in all her poetry. It's here. Indigence, poverty, to go without. Notice, she'll begin by saying, you can't experience deprivation, really, if you haven't known bounty, wealth. You've got to know bounty before you know really what it is to go without. Think of it as the young senior in high school who has been unbelievably loved all her life, and now she leaves and goes away to the university where for the first time she experiences loneliness. Why? She's never actually known loneliness. And the reason she's lonely is because now she doesn't have all of the attention that she once had. Without all that attention, she wouldn't know what loneliness even feels like. You got to have one before you have the other. They are prerequisites, if you will, even though they're opposites. Notice she'll call it a fact. The fact of famine could not be except for fact of corn. You got to have the ability to relieve the pain of the famine, for there to be any suffering of famine. It's an interesting argument. Now, obviously, she can be speaking other than literal here, no doubt. Want is a meager act. A meager art. Now, it's interesting she uses the word want that way and sets it off, notice, by want with a dash. Of course, she's referencing what? Well, the 23rd Psalm. For anyone that would know their King James Bible, the Lord is my shepherd, what I shall not want. I don't need anything. Notice here, want is a meager art. By the way, we'll see meager again in 1453 and 1531. We'll come back to this poem again with that use of meager. Meager art. In other words, it's acquired by reverse. It's an interesting argument. The best way to remember is to forget. The best way to forget is to remember. Everything is understood in its polarity, in its reverse, in its opposite. The poverty that was not wealth cannot be indigence. In other words, true poverty has to start out as wealth. You got to start out having something to know what it is to lose that something. Without having lost that something, you cannot at all appreciate its absence. It's impossible. What are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? Well, I think our argument is that true knowledge requires understanding both sides of an issue. I think that's an important idea for Emily. If you really want to have true knowledge, yes, you have to experience winning, but you also have to experience a lot of losing. It's the only way to appreciate the winning. At 2B, well, again, another comparison poem. Again, it takes us, we started this with poem 67, Success is counted sweetest. Not one of all the purple hosts who took the flag today can tell so well the definition of victory is he defeated dying, on whose forbidden ear the agonized strains birthed agonized and clear. The person lying face down in the mud who's about to die, that's the person who understands victory. Not the people who are shouting, we're number one and we won. It's the person who is the loser that understands what winning is all about. At 3A, well, I mean, obviously we mentioned the yin-yang symbol as something we can relate this to. Think about Dante and the way he loves to play as well with the opposites. Shakespeare plays the similar game as does Milton. Emily's playing in a very powerful tradition, a very interesting idea that everything is understood to us and by us through comparisons. So every time you're asked, what do you think about X? Well, you've got to think in relationship to what? Why? If you don't know any why, it's hard to talk about X. This is the profound insight of you can't really think about life if you don't appreciate death. They must cohabitate in your mind. Well, no, don't bring that up. That freaks me out. I don't want to think about... You can't think about life without thinking about death. It's cessation. It is the fact that your life must end that gives your very life any of its meaning. Which begs an intriguing question back to our study of Homer. Is that why the gods can't really love? Because they don't know what it is to end. They are immortals. And because they don't know what death is, they'll never be able to appreciate what life is. Finally, at 3B, when was a time in your life when you really only understood, quote-unquote, poverty, losing, because you had had wealth? You had had success. And then you experienced its cessation. And then you understood what true winning and losing is all about. Thank you.